Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious podcast. It's Wednesday, so it's our Wednesday Wisdom edition of the podcast, where I bring in our sports guru, Scott. Scott, our co-founder, my brother, my favorite human. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here once again. And we're going to be talking about the historic WNBA season and heading into the playoffs. I'm excited.
So I'm excited to have Scott here because if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that Scott is a huge WNBA fan, a huge Las Vegas Aces fan. So yes, he is biased, just so you know that. But he brings such insight, and I think that to me is so cool because people are watching it. We're watching it. We've been watching it, but the numbers are increasing. We have fans showing up. We have attendance records being broken. You're like the WNBA, they're here, and I'm excited to see that they continue to soar. These women who hustle and are phenomenal athletes, but also, which I learned going to my first WNBA game, like have great manicures, but also are like phenomenal athletes. Like they really can do it all.
That's a tough balance to have, isn't it? Be an incredible athlete and have a nice manicure.
It is. It definitely is. So talk to us a little bit about this season. What have we seen this season? Kind of catch everybody up to speed.
Heading into this season, we had so much hype with the new players coming in like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, mixing in with the veterans that have been in the league for a long time, that have paved the way for them to come in and shine. They added charter flights. They're not flying sitting in, Southwest row 34 as a 6'5" woman. We've seen the ratings skyrocket, attendance skyrocketing. So it's really lived up to the hype and just brought so many millions of new viewers to the WNBA and the quality product that it's been going on for years that hasn't been a secret, but has been, below the radar.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, kind of in the beginning of the season, people were like, oh, Caitlin Clark, like,
Mhm.
is she that good? Whatever, whatever. But it's like, it doesn't matter. She
Mhm.
and Angel Reese have raised the visibility, right? Asia Wilson has been a phenomenal player for a long time, but rising tides raise all ships, right? They've brought more eyeballs to the WNBA, and you're seeing that happen. And it's kind of interesting. I think in the beginning of the season, they sort of pitted this Angel Reese is bad and Caitlin Clark is good. And you don't see that. I think that's sort of dissipated because she kind of came out and said, hey, look, I'm hustling. I'm playing a great game. I'm not a bad person. Like, just
Mhm.
because I hustle and I might take someone out doesn't make me a dirty player. And so it's been cool. It's interesting to see how that narrative has changed and how it's just continuing to be a positive momentum forward.
And it may be the first time the league's like gotten into the mainstream media in the morning shows where they argue and debate for no reason, and that's where these silly and ridiculous narratives, like you spoke about, begin.
Yep.
And for these rookies, they were coming straight off, March Madness Final Four, and then they go right into the season. So they really didn't even have time to practice or get to even know their teammates until like the Olympic break. And since the Olympic break, we've seen a lot of these younger players really start to shine.
Well, I think like you said, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts, maybe in the beginning of the season, there was this big hullabaloo about neither Angel or Caitlin Clark being on
Mhm.
the Olympic roster. And that's because when the Olympic tryouts happened, they were in the playoffs in college. They didn't have a break. They rolled right into
Mhm.
training camp. They rolled right into the season. So they've basically been playing basketball for what, give or take a year straight. And so
Yeah,
this Olympic break was the only break they've had in a long time.
and it gave them a chance to adjust, maybe relax, and just kind of take a deep breath because it's been Angel and Caitlin for the past year, 2 years have been nonstop in the media and social media and everyone talking about them in their face. So it was nice, and then it gave the veterans who've been in this league, paving the path, a chance to go to the Olympics, dominate like we knew they would, and was their eighth straight gold medal.
Mhm.
So it brought a lot of. It was good for both parties that neither of them were in the Olympics, and these veterans got to go in there and shine and dominate.
It was fantastic. Now, this season has been a game changer with attendance. We've seen teams have to move to larger arenas when they're playing the
Mhm.
Indiana Fever, which is Caitlin Clark's team. It's been a game changer. We had multiple teams sell out of their season tickets before the season even started, which was a record. This has just been a cycle that has continued on an upward trajectory. And I had my first chance to see a WNBA game in
Mhm.
person this summer, and it's awesome. I mean, I really very much enjoyed the game. To me, it was no offense to those of you who love an NBA game, but to me, it was just sort of the epitome of basketball, right?
Hmm.
There was a lot of strategy, there was a lot of passing, there was a lot of teamwork, and it's a fast-paced game. And these women, which I'm shocked because you relate obviously when it's someone you see and you can relate to. Some of them were super tall, some of them were the same size as me,
Hmm.
and it was so cool, and I took my son to see that, and it was cool for him to experience that game and watch these women go out there and absolutely kill it, and to get to see Angel Reese play and how
Hmm.
excited people get about her, and it's I think this sport has been around so long, and it's finally getting the PR that it deserves, and these players are
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely. And if I was to sit here and tell like young boys and young girls either to watch the NBA or to watch the WNBA, I would tell them to watch the WNBA just because of like you spoke about. There's more the skill levels there. There's more strategy. They're playing like fundamental basketball rather than just dunk and throw alley oops.
Right. Right. And one thing that came off of this year is there's a new TV contract that's in the works, right?
Hmm.
Which TV contract equals bigger paydays for the players. It all trickles down, right?
Yes, they're on the verge. They just negotiated an 11-year deal coming up and valued at 2.2 billion. And I'm not very good at math, but I think it's 200 million a year.
Okay.
And it might seem like a large number now, but I think 5 to 6 years from now, it's going to be, a steal for those TV contracts. As we see games averaging 1.2 million in viewership and attendance is skyrocketing. And so I think a few years from now, it's going to be an undervalued deal. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that Disney and Amazon
Hmm.
and NBC, and I think they probably got a good deal in this, being that it's a long deal and knowing that 11 years ago, the WNBA looked totally different.
Yes.
And so seeing what that trajectory looks like, and I'm sure they've obviously negotiated that in there. I'm sure they have phenomenal negotiators on their team,
Hmm.
but it'll be really interesting to see how that comes to play. And it's been negotiated, but there's also they had a new collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players a couple years ago, but I think that's coming up too soon, isn't it?
Yeah, the 2020 CBA, where I think they put in those stipulations for maternity leave,
Hmm.
which they never had before, which was great. It runs through 2027, but they can actually opt out November 1st, by November 1st of this year, which
Interesting.
the players are going to do so they can get their salaries up and ask for different things that they've probably deserved for a long time.
Right, you're
So,
looking at I mean, a salary for a high salary for a
mhm.
WNBA player is 250,000 dollars a year, which
Yeah, I
is,
think
don't get me wrong, a lot of
it's
money,
good. Yeah,
but compared to other sports, it doesn't quite equate.
I think Jackie Young of our Las Vegas Aces is the highest.
Mhm,
I think you said 250. I think Caitlin Clark's making about 75,000.
mhm,
So they're going to work to raise that. It's just gonna take time. Everybody wants instant gratification, instant results, but it'll take time. And as we
mhm,
continue to see these attendance records being broken, I think the Indiana Fever were the first team to ever have over 300,000 fans in a season. So I mean, it's pretty incredible. I mean, they're averaging like over 16,000. They keep that up, it'll be keep it going. And we have the Liberty at over 12. Our Aces are over 11,000 a game, so it's just continuing to rise.
yeah. It's cool to see. Now we're rolling into the playoffs starting the 22nd of September.
Hmm.
Now this year was a little bit of a different season because that Olympic break in the middle kind of threw the whole season off.
Yeah, it's a unique season. I think it's basically two different seasons, like kind of like you said before, pre-Olympic break and after Olympic break. So they're playing way more games. The players that end up going to the Olympics. So it'll be interesting to see how how stamina works as we get into the playoffs and it gets extremely physical and you're playing the same team 3, 4 times in a row.
Right. So what does the format of the playoffs look like so we can be prepared when they start on Sunday the 22nd, that we can be well researched and know what we're talking about?
So unlike a lot of other professional sports where they have East and West and the East and West play each other and then the winners of that meet, it's just the top 8 teams. across the
Okay.
league. So it's not broken up into East and West. They just go 1 through 8, which is kind of unique. It's, it doesn't really matter if you're East or West. So it's kind of, it's interesting to see how it plays out.
And has that always been that format?
As long as I can remember, yes.
Okay. Got it. Well, and it seems like I guess you have 12 teams, right? So
Yeah.
7 is a pretty big number when you think of a percentage of the teams that make the playoffs then.
Yeah, there's very few teams that don't make the playoffs.
That's right. That's
So
what
everyone,
that's what I was gonna say, because I feel like there's some sports where everybody makes the playoffs, it seems, like the NBA.
yeah.
Um, but then we're rolling out, when do our new teams roll on board
So
for the gym?
the team in San Francisco, the Valkyries, come in next season. They'll
Okay.
be in the league next season. They'll play at where the Golden State Warriors play.
Okay.
So they'll be in, I think, did they announce that? I don't know if it's been official. There's another team coming in. I think it's Portland.
Was it Portland? Okay, I thought it
I
was
believe
Toronto,
so,
but
yeah. Or it might have been Toronto too. I don't know. But yeah, so, and if you expand too fast, then you water down the product. So they're doing a good job in slowly introducing teams. But if you follow a team, you'll see that, the Aces they'll play the same team 2 times in a row on the road. So it kind of gets exhausting with only small amount of teams. You face the same people so many different times.
right, so
And
by the
that's what,
time we reach the finals, it's like may have already
yeah,
played you.
and that's what makes kind of the season exhausting too. You're facing the same people nonstop. They know what you're doing.
That makes sense. So Golden State Warriors start the Golden State team, the Valkyries, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
2025. Toronto is a 2026.
Okay, Toronto. Sorry,
Toronto.
Toronto.
So that's okay. Hey, we're gonna have a World Series of world champion now because we have Toronto. So
Yeah, Noah Lyles can't talk trash that they're not world champions now because they have another
there you go.
country. So,
There you go.
but he probably will at some point just to stay relevant, like he's been doing.
That's true. That's a true point. So who are we watching in the playoffs?
Of course, we have our Las Vegas Aces, the 2-time defending champions. They're going for a three-peat, which only been done once by the Houston Comets, who are no longer in existence. So, although they kind of had a weird season, there were some injuries. I think it just going so deep in the playoffs for so long took its toll. So
Sure.
right now, I think they're in the 4th seed. Number 1 seed's New York Liberty, who the Aces faced in the final last year. They've been pretty dominant all year.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very strong squad. I think you saw them play the
I
Sky,
did.
if I'm not mistaken, and
I
you got
did.
to
It was
see.
pretty cool to see. To sit there with a
Mhm.
tiny human and be like, okay, that's who that person is. That's who that person is. You've heard of this person. That's who that person is. This is their qualifications. Like, it was cool to see and really highlight some of these phenomenal players in the league.
And you got to see the size differential. That I think that was the epitome of. They have Jonquil Jones, which is, I think she's 6'8", 6'7", and
Mm-hmm.
then Sabrina Iescu, who you saw was, I think she's 5'6", maybe, like you said,
Maybe. I mean, it
5'7".
was crazy because I remember him saying like, those people are the same size as you. And I'm like, they
Yeah,
are.
yeah. So that's,
I could play basketball, but I'm just not that talented. I have the right height, apparently.
but yeah, just not the right skill set.
Not the right skill set. Now, I have other skill sets, and it's not that.
And I know your son made a friend who was on the Sky, but is now on the Sun, who are sitting in the 3rd seed, and they're strong. So I know he has someone to look forward to watching other than our Aces, right?
Yeah, it was so cool. We had a chance to meet Marina Mabry, who is a Notre Dame grad. So we were connected through that. And it's so funny because kids just have this whole
Mhm.
different perspective, right? Where he was like, hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for signing this sign that I brought. But do you want to play tag? And
And
that's where
she
we were at.
and she played tag, correct?
And she played tag with him,
And then I
which
think she got
was cool.
traded the week after, so I had to break his heart.
Right. But that's how we learn about the world of sports.
That's sports, yeah. So he's learning
That is sports to you.
at an early age,
Everyone becomes a number at some point.
unfortunately, sadly.
So
But
gives us another team to cheer for,
yeah, and at least
another player to watch for.
as they said in the 3 seed, so she'll be front and center for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, and we have Minnesota Link. We'll circle back to the Minnesota Link. They're currently in the 2 seed, and their coach was the Olympic coach, so she's got so much experience coaching all these great players. So unfortunately, she also knows everything about them,
Right.
which is they've been the Aces kryptonite this year, so it's kind of tough. But at least they got gold.
There you go. And if I remember correctly, the Minnesota Lynx is owned by the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is owned by Alex Rodriguez and his business partners, right?
Not technically.
Not
Remember,
technically. I thought they were the
there's
same ownership.
They're still disputing that.
Oh, they're still disputing that. Okay.
Yeah, something happened. Rich people stuff. I don't know. So
Okay.
maybe
There's that.
someday. Yes,
Maybe one day we'll understand when we try to buy a basketball team.
correct.
There you go.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll fill you all in when that happens.
yeah. It's a mess. Then we have the Storm, Seattle Storm are in it. Indiana Fever, who were the worst team in the league last year. That's how they get the #1 pick. Caitlin, and she's got the whole team going. They made for the first time since 2016, I believe. So
Yeah.
she's got the fan base reinvigorated there. So it'll be. I mean, it's really just incredible. Phoenix Mercury are in it. They've got Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner. A lot of big
It's
names. The matchups will be incredibly intense and fierce.
yeah, it's really interesting, and we've talked about this previously, especially when college basketball, March Madness last year.
Mhm.
How many more names I know out of women's basketball than I
Oh,
do out of men's. And I
yeah.
think that I could probably fair to say that my hypothesis would be that I think that might be the case with a lot of people. If you listed names and like, are they actual athletes or not? I think people would get those more. I mean, Brittany Griner obviously was in the news because of last
Mhm.
year, being in Russia, and so it'll be such cool basketball. It'll be such exciting basketball, and I think they've done it smart where they're picking up on a Sunday and they're trying to, in theory, kind of dodge around and dance around the NFL season and college football because the way the season's landed, they have to navigate around all that.
Yeah, and October is the most action-packed sports month of the year with college football, NFL, NHL starts, Major League Baseball playoffs. I mean, it's
I
really
think
like,
the NBA starts in October
and the
too,
NBA
right?
too. Later, NBA in theory should start after the finals are over, hopefully, because the
In theory,
finals
right?
latest date it can finish is October 20th, and I think that's right when the NBA starts. So it'll
Okay.
be a nice transition.
It'll give us something else to fill the void
Yes,
along with all the other sports.
there's a lot. Yeah, there'll be a lot to compete with, but I think hopefully they'll do a good job in scheduling times.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for filling us in on the WNBA playoffs that we're rolling into September 22nd this Sunday. So you are all set, ready to go. Of course, follow us lastnightsgame.com and on social media where you will be able, we'll keep you posted on all the things because that's our job. So follow us on there. And if there's things you want to know or things you haven't learned today that you have questions about, send us a note through DMs, either on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, and we will make sure we answer those. Thanks for joining me today, Scott.
Thank you. I'd love to talk WNBA with anyone who wants to talk. So let's